The machine started screaming the second she yanked the cord, but the scariest part wasn't the deafening alarm. It was the smug, satisfied smile on my own sister's face as she watched my heart rate monitor skyrocket into the red. My name is Mary Garcia. I'm 32 years old, and I learned the hard way that shared DNA doesn't stop a predator from attacking prey, even when the prey is strapped to a hospital bed. To understand why my sister, Melissa, tried to kill me in the ICU, you have to understand the dynamic of our family. In the Garcia household, there were two distinct roles assigned at birth. Melissa was the golden child. She was the cheerleader, the valedictorian, the one who could do no wrong. I was the fragile one. I didn't want that label, but my body gave me no choice. I was born with a digestive system that decided to clock out early. By my late 20s, I was diagnosed with severe gastroparesis. Essentially, my stomach is paralyzed. It doesn't digest food. Eating a normal meal causes me excruciating pain and vomiting that can last for days. For years, I managed it with strict diets and medication, but 6 months ago, my body crashed. I dropped to 85 pounds. My organs were shutting down from malnutrition. The doctors didn't give me a choice. They surgically placed a feeding tube directly into my small intestine. It was a terrifying, life-altering surgery, but it was the only thing keeping me alive. Most people would look at their skeletal, bedridden sister and feel empathy. Melissa felt inconvenience. See, Melissa was getting married. Her dream wedding was scheduled for 3 weeks after I was admitted to the ICU for a severe infection around my tube site. I was septic. My fever was spiking to 104 and I was drifting in and out of consciousness. My parents naturally were worried sick. They were spending their days by my bedside, holding my hand, praying I'd pull through. This didn't sit well with the bride-to-be. Every time Melissa visited the hospital, she didn't ask how I was feeling. She checked her watch. She sighed loudly. She complained that Mom wasn't answering her texts about floral arrangements. You know, she said one afternoon, standing over my bed while I shivered from the fever. It's really convenient timing, Mary, really convenient. I blinked at her, my throat too dry to speak properly. What? All it- The wedding, she hissed, checking the door to make sure our parents were still in the cafeteria. I've been planning this for 2 years. 2 years, Mary. And right when the RSVPs are due, right when I need Mom and Dad's financial help for the final deposits, you decide to have a crisis. I'm septic, I whispered. I'm not doing this on purpose. Melissa rolled her eyes. It was a gesture I knew well. It was the same look she gave me when I couldn't go to her graduation because I was vomiting blood. The same look she gave me when I had to leave her engagement party early because I was about to pass out. To Melissa, my illness wasn't a medical condition. It was a character flaw. It was a spotlight-stealing act. You always do this, she said, pacing around the small ICU room. Her heels clicked aggressively on the linoleum. You love the drama, look at this setup. The beeping machines, the tubes, the sad, worried looks from Mom, you eat it up. Literally. She gestured to the feeding pump hanging on the IV pole next to me. It was a complex piece of machinery, rhythmically pumping a specialized formula directly into my intestines because my stomach couldn't handle a single cracker. I'd give anything to be normal, I said, tears pricking my eyes. I'd give anything to be at your wedding. Oh, stop it, she snapped. You're not sick, Mary, you're anorexic. I've read about this. You just don't want to eat because you want to be the skinny sister. You want everyone to pity you. I turned my head away, staring at the wall. There was no reasoning with her. There never had been, but I thought surely here in the intensive care unit with a central line in my neck and a tube in my stomach, she would have to accept reality. I was wrong. 2 days later, the situation escalated. My husband, David, had to go to work. He had used up all his sick leave and we needed the insurance. My parents had gone home to shower and change, exhausted from sleeping in the waiting room chairs. I was alone. I was feeling slightly better that morning. The antibiotics were working, bringing my fever down, but I was weak. My muscles had atrophied. Lifting my arm felt like lifting a lead weight. I was dozing off, the rhythmic asterisk whoosh click of the feeding pump lulling me to sleep. The door creaked open. I opened my eyes, expecting a nurse. Instead, I saw Melissa. She wasn't wearing a visitor badge. She must have slipped past the nurse's station while they were doing shift change. She was dressed immaculately in a white pantsuit, looking like she just stepped out of a magazine, which stood in stark contrast to the sterile, gray room. Hey, she said. Her voice wasn't angry this time. It was cold, analytical. Melissa. I rasped, where are mom and dad? I told them I'd take the shift, she said, closing the door behind her. She didn't sit in the chair. She walked straight to the side of my bed. She loomed over me. We need to have a talk, Mary, a real talk. No doctors, no parents to protect you. My heart rate monitor picked up speed. Beep, beep, beep. What do you want? I want you to stop lying, she said. She reached out and touched the plastic tubing that ran from the formula bag to my abdomen. Her fingernails were manicured a sharp blood red. She flicked the tube. I'm done with this charade. Mom and Dad might buy it, David might buy it, but I know you. I am not lying, I said, trying to push myself up, but my arms shook and collapsed. I have a paralyzed stomach. The doctors have the scans, they have the data. Doctors can be fooled, she said dismissively. You're smart, Mary. You always were the bookworm. You know what to say to get the drugs. You know how to fake the symptoms. She leaned in close, her perfume, something expensive and floral, clashing with the smell of rubbing alcohol. It made me nauseous. I need you to be better by Friday, she whispered. The wedding is in 2 weeks. I need you discharged, and I need you to stop looking like a corpse. You're ruining the photos. You're ruining the vibe. If you're still in here next week, Mom says she's going to skip the rehearsal dinner to stay with you. I won't let you take that from me. I can't control when I get discharged. I cried out, I'm on life support, Melissa. This isn't life support, she shouted, her mask slipping. It's a prop, it's a crutch. She grabbed the feeding tube line. Melissa, don't, I gasped. Panic surged through me. That tube was sutured into my skin. It went deep into my body. Don't touch it. Oh, you don't need this, she said, her eyes manic. If you were really hungry, you'd eat. If you were really sick, you wouldn't have the energy to argue with me. You're faking it, and I'm going to prove it. She looked at the pump machine. It had a glowing screen and several buttons. She didn't know how to work it, I could tell. She started mashing buttons, trying to turn it off. Stop. I screamed, but it came out as a weak croak. You're going to hurt me. I'm saving you from yourself. She yelled back. When she couldn't figure out the buttons, she did something worse. She grabbed the junction where the extension set connected to the port on my stomach. It's a locking mechanism. If you don't know how to disconnect it properly and you just pull. And Melissa, no. Oh, she yanked. She didn't unclip it. She didn't twist it. She just pulled the line with all her strength, trying to rip the prop away from me. The pain was blinding. It felt like someone had stabbed a hot poker into my abdomen and twisted it. The tube didn't come out. It was held in by a water-filled balloon inside me, but the force of her yank tore the skin around the stoma site. I screamed. It was a guttural, wet sound. The machine sensed the occlusion and the pressure change immediately. The alarm started blaring. Beep, beep, beep. A high-pitched, urgent sound that signaled a critical failure. Blood started to seep through the gauze on my stomach, staining the white hospital sheets crimson. Melissa stumbled back, holding the disconnected end of the tubing. Formula was dripping from it onto her expensive white shoes. She looked at the tube in her hand, then at me writhing in agony on the bed. For a second, I saw fear in her eyes, but then it hardened back into that terrifying, delusional resolve. See, she said, her voice trembling but defiant. You're not dead, you're fine, it's just a tube. My vision was blurring from the pain. I was hyperventilating, which triggered the heart monitor to scream even louder. The room was a cacophony of alarms. Help, I wheezed, help me. Stop acting, Melissa hissed. She threw the tubing onto my legs. Stop making that noise, you're just trying to get the nurses in here to make me look bad. She reached for the call button to cancel the alarm, trying to hide what she had done. She wanted to silence the room, to cover up the assault, to force me to lay there in silence so she could continue her lecture. But she wasn't fast enough. The door to the ICU room flew open. It wasn't just a tech, it was the charge nurse, a woman named Sarah who had been managing my care for 3 days. Sarah was a veteran. She had seen everything. She knew my case inside and out. She knew how much pain I was in. Sarah froze in the doorway for a fraction of a second, taking in the scene. She saw me, pale and gasping, clutching my bleeding stomach. She saw the disconnected life support tubing lying on the bed. She saw the blood spreading across the sheets. And she saw Melissa. Standing there in her white suit, formula dripping on her shoes, with a look of guilt and aggression plastered on her face. What in the hell is going on here? Sarah barked, rushing to my side. She did it herself. Melissa blurted out instantly. She went crazy. She ripped it out because she wanted attention. I tried to stop her. I looked at Sarah, tears streaming down my face, unable to speak, shaking my head violently. Please, asterisk, I thought, please don't believe her. Sarah didn't look at Melissa. She was already putting gloves on, checking the site, assessing the damage. She saw the tear in the skin. She saw the angle of the tube. She checked the machine logs. Then she stood up and turned to face my sister. The look on the nurse's face was terrifying. It wasn't the polite customer service face. It was the face of a medical professional who just witnessed an assault. Step away from the patient, Sarah said, her voice deadly quiet. I'm her sister. Melissa shouted. I'm telling you she's having a psychiatric episode. She tried to hurt herself to ruin my wedding. I said step back. Sarah commanded, pointing to the wall. Security is already on their way. The security, Melissa scoffed. For what? For dealing with a crazy person. No, Sarah said, positioning herself between Melissa and my bed like a human shield. For attempted murder. The color drained from Melissa's face. Excuse me. You disconnected a life-sustaining device from a critical patient, Sarah said, her eyes locking onto Melissa's. And I saw you holding the line. I saw you standing over her while she bled. You're not going anywhere. Melissa laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. You can't be serious. I'm going to sue this hospital. I'm going to have your job. You don't know who you're messing with. And you, Sarah replied, pressing the code button on the wall to summon the doctor, don't realize that this room has audio recording for liability purposes. The silence that followed was heavier than the alarms. Melissa's mouth dropped open. She looked up at the corner of the room, searching for a camera, searching for a way out. But the trap was already sprung. The betrayal was complete, but the reckoning was just beginning. And as the security guards marched into the room, filling the doorway with their dark uniforms, I knew my sister's dream wedding was about to turn into a nightmare. The security guards didn't ask questions. They didn't care about Melissa's white pantsuit or her expensive blowout. They saw a woman screaming at a nurse while a patient bled out on the bed, and they reacted with the kind of physical efficiency that leaves no room for negotiation. Two large men in dark uniforms stepped into the room. One grabbed Melissa's arm, not gently. Don't touch me. Melissa shrieked, wrenching her arm back. She's the one you need to restrain. Look at her, she's unstable. Ma'am, you need to come with us, the guard said, his voice flat. I am the victim here. Melissa yelled, pointing a manicured finger at me. I was curled in a fetal position, clutching a towel to my stomach that Sarah, the nurse, had pressed against the wound. My sister is having a psychotic break. She ripped her own tube out to manipulate me. Ask her right now. I couldn't breathe enough to answer. The pain was radiating from my stoma site in hot electric waves. Every time I gasped for air, my abdominal muscles contracted, pulling on the raw, torn flesh. Sarah didn't look up from my stomach. She kept applying pressure, her face set in grim determination. Get her out of here, she barked at the guards. Now. You will be hearing from my lawyer. Melissa screamed as they dragged her backward into the hallway. And you. She locked eyes with me one last time, her face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. Don't think you're getting away with this, Mary. You're not ruining my day. You're dead to me. Do you hear me? Dead. The door swung shut, cutting off her voice, but the echo of her words bounced around the sterile room. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the frantic beeping of the cardiac monitor and my own ragged, wet breathing. It's okay, Mary, Sarah whispered, her hand steady on my abdomen. She's gone, you're safe, breathe with me, in and out. But I couldn't feel safe. The adrenaline was crashing, replaced by a cold, creeping horror. My sister hadn't just been mean, she hadn't just been selfish. She had physically attacked me, jeopardized my life, and then, without missing a beat, tried to have me committed as a danger to myself. A doctor rushed in, Dr. Evans. He was young, serious, and looked exhausted. Sarah filled him in quickly, her voice low and professional, using terms like trauma to the stoma site, external bumper displacement, and suspected intentional removal attempt. Dr. Evans pulled back the towel. I flinched, a fresh tear leaking from my eye. "Okay, Mary," he said softly. "I'm going to have to numb this area. It looks like there's a laceration at the exit site and the granulation tissue has been torn. We need to stabilize the tube so it doesn't migrate." The next hour was a blur of localized pain. The lidocaine shots burned like fire before the numbness set in. I lay there, staring at the ceiling tiles, counting the little dots, trying to dissociate from the reality that my own blood was on the sheets because of my sibling. I thought the worst part was over. I thought the physical assault was the climax. I was wrong. The physical pain was manageable. I had lived with chronic pain for years. It was the emotional evisceration that came next that nearly broke me. About 2 hours later, my parents arrived. I had expected them to burst in with tears in their eyes, terrified for my safety. I expected my mother to stroke my hair and my father to demand answers from the hospital administration about how someone could assault his daughter in the ICU. Instead, the door opened slowly. My mother walked in first. Her eyes were red, but her jaw was set tight. My father trailed behind her, looking at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. "Mom," I croaked. My voice was raspy from the crying. "Did they tell you?" My mother stopped at the foot of the bed. She didn't come to my side. She didn't take my hand. She looked at the fresh bandages on my stomach, then up at my face. "Melissa called us," she said. Her voice was trembling, but it wasn't with sympathy. It was with disappointment. My stomach dropped, a sensation entirely separate from my illness. She called you." "She's in the parking lot, Mary," my dad said, finally looking up. He looked old, tired. "She's hysterical. She says the security guards bruised her arm. She says you threatened to kill yourself if she didn't cancel the wedding." The room spun. "What?" "She said you were screaming about how unfair it was," my mother continued, her voice rising in pitch. "She said you grabbed the tube and told her that if she walked down the aisle, you'd rip it out right in front of her. She said she tried to stop you, and you started screaming for the nurses to frame her." I stared at them, my own parents, the people who raised me, the people who had watched me waste away to 80 pounds, who knew how hard I fought every single day just to stay alive. "And you believe her?" I whispered. "Mary, look at the timing," my mother said, tears finally spilling over, but they were tears of frustration. "The wedding is in 2 weeks. You've been so depressed. We know you're jealous of Melissa. We know it's hard for you to see her happy and healthy while you're like this." She gestured vaguely at my body at the machines. "I am not jealous," I said, my voice shaking with a rage I didn't know I possessed. "I am sick. She pulled the tube, Mom. She yanked it. She tried to hurt me because I wasn't getting better fast enough for her pictures." Melissa faints at the sight of blood. My mother snapped. "You expect us to believe she walked in here and ripped a tube out of your stomach? Melissa, the girl who cries during animal commercials." "She is a liar," I said. "She has always been a liar." "She is your sister," my father boomed. It was the first time he had raised his voice. "And she is distraught. She's out there terrified that you're going to press charges because that nurse has it out for her. Mary, you have to stop this. You have to tell the administration it was an accident." I felt cold, ice cold. An accident. "Tell them you got confused," my mother pleaded, stepping closer now, her desperation palpable. "Tell them it was a reaction to the medication. If you file a police report, Mary, it will ruin the wedding. Melissa could get arrested. Do you want your sister in jail on her wedding day?" "She attacked me," I repeated, tears hot on my cheeks. "She stood right where you are standing and told me I was faking it. She hurt me." "Oh, stop it," my mother cried out, throwing her hands up. "Always the victim. Melissa is right. You love this. You love making us choose." "Well, we're not doing it, Mary. We are not letting you destroy this family because you need attention." My father sighed, pulling a checkbook out of his jacket pocket. "Mary, look, we know things are tight with David being out of work. If you drop this, if you just tell the nurse it was a misunderstanding, we can help you with the medical bills. We can pay off the deductible for this hospital stay." It was a bribe. They were buying my silence. They were buying Melissa's freedom with the money they had saved for her wedding, offering me crumbs to keep the golden child's reputation spotless. I looked at my father, a man I used to think was the strongest person in the world. Now I saw him for what he was, an enabler. A man so terrified of his other daughter's tantrums that he would sacrifice his sick child to avoid them. Get out, I whispered. Mary, be reasonable, my dad started. I said get out. I screamed. The force of it hurt my stomach, but I didn't care. Get out of my room, get out. Sarah, the nurse, appeared in the doorway instantly as if she had been waiting. She probably had been. Visiting hours are over, Sarah said, her voice like steel. You need to leave now. We're family, my mother hissed at her. Not right now, you're not, Sarah said. You're aggravating a critical patient. Leave or I call security again, and trust me, they are already very eager to come back up here. My parents looked at me one last time. There was no love in their eyes, only anger, only blame. They turned and walked out, leaving me alone in the wreckage of my life. I lay there for a long time, staring at the wall. I felt hollowed out. The physical pain was a dull throb now, masked by the emotional agony of being orphaned while my parents were still alive. Then my phone buzzed on the bedside table. I knew who it was before I looked. It was a text from Melissa. I picked up the phone, my hand trembling. Melissa, I hope you're happy. Mom is crying in the car. Dad is having chest pains. You've managed to make everything about you again. Congrats. I didn't reply. A second text came through. Melissa, don't think you can manipulate them forever. I told them the truth about you. Everyone knows you're just an addict looking for the next dose. If you try to press charges, I will sue you for defamation. I have the money. I have the lawyers. You have nothing but a husband who's too broke to pay attention and a stomach that doesn't work. Drop it, Mary, or you'll never see any of us again. I read the message twice. She wasn't sorry, she wasn't scared, she was emboldened. She truly believed that she could rewrite reality because she had always been allowed to. She thought her narrative, the successful, beautiful sister versus the crazy, sick, jealous sister, would hold up in court just because it held up at the dinner table. She didn't know about the audio recording. My parents didn't know about the audio recording. I looked at the door where Sarah was standing guard, typing notes into a computer. Sarah, a stranger, had defended me more in 5 minutes than my parents had in 32 years. I realized then that if I didn't stop Melissa, she would eventually kill me. Maybe not today, maybe not with a feeding tube, but the stress, the gaslighting, the neglect, it would kill me. The door opened again. This time it was two police officers, a man and a woman. They looked serious. Mrs. Garcia, the female officer asked, I'm Officer Miller. The charge nurse called us regarding an assault. Are you up to giving a statement? I looked at the phone in my hand. I looked at Melissa's threat, you'll never see any of us again. If I spoke, I lost my family. If I stayed silent, I lost myself. I thought about the wedding. I thought about Melissa in her white dress, dancing, drinking champagne, laughing about how she handled her crazy sister. I thought about my parents toasting to her happiness while I lay in a hospital bed, paying for my own silence. I looked at Officer Miller. Yes, I said, my voice steady for the first time all day. I want to give a statement, and I want to press charges. Okay, Officer Miller said, pulling out a notepad. Can you tell us what happened? My sister tried to kill me, I said, and I can prove it. But even as I said the words, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Melissa wasn't going to go down without a fight. She was going to drag my name through the mud. She was going to weaponize every relative, every family friend, every bridesmaid against me. She was going to make me the villain of her fairy tale. Let her try, because what Melissa forgot is that I've been fighting my own body for 5 years. I know how to endure pain. I know how to survive when the odds are zero. She's used to getting everything she wants by pouting and demanding. She has no idea what it's like to fight for your life. She started a war in the ICU. She thought she was kicking a wounded dog. She didn't realize she was waking up a survivor. The officer clicked her pen. Start from the beginning, Mrs. Garcia. My name is Mary, I said, taking a deep breath. And my sister Melissa came into this room at approximately 10:00 a.m. She was not authorized to be here. As I spoke, detailing every word, every touch, every moment of the assault, I felt a strange sensation. The fear was evaporating. The sadness was hardening into something useful, something cold. I wasn't the fragile sister anymore. I was the witness for the prosecution, and Melissa, the golden child. She was about to learn that in the real world, outside of our parents' living room, actions have consequences. And unlike a wedding RSVP, a felony charge is something you can't just decline. The nurse, Sarah, walked back in as I was finishing my statement. She held a small USB drive in her hand. She caught my eye and gave me a barely perceptible nod. The audio, Melissa thought she had won the narrative because she got to our parents first. She thought her tears and her pantsuit and her wedding drama would overshadow the truth. She was betting everything on her ability to lie. She didn't know the house always wins, and in this hospital, the house was wired for sound. I finished my statement. The officers left to go find Melissa in the parking lot. I lay back against the pillows, exhausted, my stomach throbbing, my heart racing. I was alone. My parents were gone. My sister was my enemy. My husband was rushing to the hospital, terrified. My life as I knew it was over, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel weak. I reached for my phone and opened the text thread with Melissa. I didn't type a defense. I didn't beg for understanding. I didn't accept her ultimatum. I typed 3 words, save the date. Then I blocked her. The wedding was in 2 weeks. Melissa wanted a show. She wanted all eyes on her. She wanted a day nobody would ever forget. I was going to give her exactly what she wanted, just not the way she planned. 2 minutes after I sent that text, I watched the finale of the drama my sister had orchestrated, but I watched it from 4 stories up. My hospital room window overlooked the main entrance and the visitor parking lot. I dragged my IV pole over to the glass, ignoring the sharp pull in my abdomen. Down below, the flashing blue and red lights of a squad car cut through the gloom of the evening. I saw my mother clutching her purse to her chest, sobbing. I saw my father arguing with a uniformed officer, his arms waving in frantic, impotent circles. And I saw Melissa. She wasn't in handcuffs yet. She was standing by the driver's side of her convertible, gesturing wildly at the female officer, Officer Miller. Even from this distance, I could read her body language. The stomp of the foot, the toss of the hair. She was doing the "do you know who I am" routine. She was explaining that this was all a big misunderstanding, that her sister was a mentally unstable invalid who needed a psych hold, not a victim. Then Officer Miller stepped forward. She didn't buy the routine. She spun Melissa around, pulled her arms behind her back, and the silver glint of handcuffs flashed under the streetlights. Melissa's knees buckled. For the first time in her life, the tantrum didn't work. The tears didn't work. She was shoved, not gently, into the back of the cruiser. Her white pantsuit, the armor she wore to intimidate me, disappeared into the dark cage of a police vehicle. My parents stood there, frozen, watching the car pull away. They didn't look up at my window. They got into their own car and followed the police, leaving their dying daughter alone in the ICU to chase after the one who tried to kill her. I thought I would feel triumphant. Instead, I just felt exhausted. My husband, David, arrived 20 minutes later. He burst into the room, sweat dripping down his forehead, his eyes wide with panic. He had run from the parking garage. When he saw the blood-soaked bandages on my stomach and the pale, gray cast to my skin, he didn't say a word. He just collapsed into the chair next to me and buried his face in my hand, sobbing. "I'm okay," I whispered, stroking his hair. "I'm okay." "I'm going to kill her," he said, his voice muffled but vibrating with a rage I had never heard from him before. "I am going to kill her." "You don't have to," I said, looking at the empty doorway where the police had stood. "She just killed herself." The next 10 days were a blur of physical recovery and psychological warfare. My parents bilayed Melissa out the next morning. Of course they did. They put up their house, the house I grew up in, as collateral for her bond. The charges were serious: aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and attempted injury to a disabled individual. In our state, that's a second-degree felony. But Melissa, true to form, didn't go into hiding. She went on the offense. Since I had blocked her, I didn't see the messages directly, but friends sent me screenshots. Her Facebook status was a masterpiece of fiction. "Please pray for my family. My sister Mary has suffered a severe mental break due to her illness and has made false allegations against me. It breaks my heart to see her like this, but we are standing by her in hopes she gets the psychiatric help she needs. The wedding is still on. We won't let lies destroy love." She was doubling down. She was telling the world I was crazy so that when the truth came out, she could claim I hallucinated the attack. She was banking on the fact that it was her word against mine. She thought it was a he said she said scenario, and she was the charismatic, beautiful bride while I was the emaciated, drug-addled recluse. She didn't know about the USB drive in Sarah's pocket. The district attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Vance, visited me 3 days later. She took one look at the photos of my torn stoma site, listened to the nurse's statement, and smiled a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We have a preliminary hearing set for Friday, Mrs. Vance told me. It's technically just to determine if there's enough evidence to proceed to trial and to review her bail conditions. Your sister's lawyer is pushing for a dismissal. He's claiming there's no objective proof of intent. Friday, I asked. That's 2 days before the wedding. Mrs. Vance closed her folder. I know, her lawyer tried to postpone it until after the honeymoon. I denied that request. Friday morning arrived with a heavy gray drizzle. I wasn't allowed to leave the hospital yet. I was still on IV nutrition while my sight healed, so I couldn't be in the courtroom. But Sarah, the charge nurse, was subpoenaed. David went to the courthouse to represent us. He texted me updates play-by-play. David, she's here. She's wearing a conservative blue dress. Looks like a choir girl. Mom and Dad are holding her hands. They're glaring at me. David, her lawyer, is loud. He's telling the judge this is a family dispute that got out of hand. He's calling you hysterical and medicated. David, Melissa is crying, fake tears, she's nodding along. She looks confident, Mary. She thinks she's walking out of here. I lay in my hospital bed, staring at the phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. The fear started to creep back in. What if the judge believed her? What if the audio wasn't clear? What if money and charisma really were enough to beat the truth? Then the text stopped. 10 minutes passed. 20, I started to hyperventilate. The monitor beside me began to ping faster. Had the judge dismissed it? Was Melissa laughing in the hallway right now, heading to her rehearsal dinner? My phone buzzed. David, Sarah is on the stand. I closed my eyes and pictured it. Sarah, the no-nonsense nurse who had terrified security guards, standing in the witness box. David, her lawyer, is trying to rattle Sarah, asking if she actually saw the grab, asking if it's possible you pulled it yourself in a confusion state. Another long pause. David, Sarah just destroyed him. She said, I didn't just see it, I heard it, and so did the room. David, the DA is introducing the recording. This was it, the trap. The hospital room had a continuous audio buffer for liability in ICU codes. It records on a loop. Sarah had pulled the log the second she called the code. I could imagine the silence in that courtroom. I could imagine the judge, a tired man who had heard every lie in the book, leaning forward. I could imagine the recording playing over the speakers. Click. Melissa's voice, clear and cold. This isn't life support, it's a prop, it's a crutch. My voice, weak and terrified. Melissa, don't touch it. Melissa, you're faking it and I'm going to prove it. The sound of plastic snapping, the wet tearing sound, my scream. The alarms blaring. Melissa, see, you're not dead, you're fine, it's just a tube. I waited, the silence on my end was deafening. David, it's over. David, the judge, looks furious. Melissa's face is white. Her lawyer is trying to object, saying it was recorded without consent. DA is citing the hospital consent forms Mom signed upon admission. It's admissible. David, the judge is speaking. I didn't wait for the text. I called David. Tell me, I demanded the second he picked up. You should have seen it, Mary, David said, his voice trembling with adrenaline. You should have seen the look on her face when that audio played. She shrank. She physically shrank. Oh, what did the judge do? He interrupted her lawyer, David said, sounding almost giddy. He said, Counselor, your client didn't just assault a disabled person. She taunted her while she was bleeding. This shows malice, premeditation, and a complete lack of remorse. I held my breath and... He revoked her bail, David said. Immediate remand. He said she's a danger to the community and a flight risk given the looming wedding. He put her in jail. They handcuffed her right there at the defense table, David said. She started screaming, not the fake crying, Mary, real screaming. She was yelling at Mom to fix it. She was yelling that she had a dress fitting at 4 o'clock. She screamed, I'm the bride, you can't do this to the bride. What did Mom do? She fainted, David said flatly. Dad just sat there with his head in his hands. The bailiff dragged Melissa out the side door. She's gone, Mary. She's in county lockup. She's not making the wedding. I hung up the phone and let the tears come, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, unadulterated relief. The monster was in a cage, but the karma wasn't done yet, because Melissa hadn't just ruined her own life, she had set a bomb in the middle of her social circle and the timer had just hit 0. The wedding was supposed to be in 48 hours. Guests were already flying in. The venue was paid for. The caterers were prepping, and the bride was wearing an orange jumpsuit. Since my parents were incapacitated, mom in the hospital for stress, dad trying to find a criminal defense attorney who could work a miracle on a Friday afternoon, nobody told the guests. Nobody canceled the vendors. Melissa had been the only one with the contact list, and her phone was currently bagged in an evidence locker at the police station. I could have told someone, I could have posted a status update. I could have saved everyone the trouble, but I remembered the text. You have nothing but a husband who's too broke to pay attention and a stomach that doesn't work. I decided to let the universe handle the RSVP. Sunday arrived, the day of the event of the year. I was feeling strong enough to sit up and scroll through social media. It was a train wreck in slow motion. At 2:00 p.m., guests started posting photos from the venue, a stunning vineyard estate. They were tagging Melissa. Melissa and Mark 2024 wedding day. They were drinking champagne, they were smiling, they had no idea. At 3:00 p.m., the ceremony was supposed to start. At 3:15 p.m., the whispers started online. Where is the bride? At 3:30 p.m., the groom, Mark, a decent guy who I honestly think had no idea who he was really marrying, walked out to the altar. But he wasn't smiling. He was holding a microphone. Someone live-streamed it. I watched from my hospital bed, sipping my apple juice. Mark looked like he had been hit by a truck. Apparently, Dad had finally called him 10 minutes ago. Everyone, Mark said, his voice cracking. I have to announce that there won't be a wedding today. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Melissa has been detained, Mark said, struggling to find the words. There has been an incident involving her sister. The police are involved. I don't know all the details, but she's in custody. The camera panned to the crowd. It was chaos. People were checking their phones. The news of the arrest and the leaked details of the charges had just hit the local crime blotter online. I watched as the realization swept through the audience. The golden child, the perfect valedictorian, was sitting in a jail cell for ripping a feeding tube out of her dying sister to make her look better in photos. The comments on the live stream started rolling in. Oh wait, she did what? I went to high school with her. She was always a bully. Is this real? Attempted murder. Then the final blow, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the hospital's billing department, but underneath it was a text from my father. Dad, are you happy now? You've destroyed your sister. You've humiliated us in front of everyone we know. Mark is walking away. The wedding is a $50,000 waste. I hope you're satisfied. I looked at the text. I looked at the live stream where the guests were awkwardly shuffling toward the exit, leaving the expensive floral arrangements to wilt in the sun. I typed back, Mary, I didn't destroy her, Dad, I just survived her. And by the way, since you're worried about money. The lawyer says I can sue for civil damages for the assault. That $50,000 wasted on the wedding. That's just the down payment on my pain and suffering. I put the phone down. Nurse Sarah walked in to check my vitals. She saw the live stream on my screen, the empty chairs, the confused guests, the ruins of a narcissist's dream. Heart rate is steady, Sarah said, smiling. Blood pressure is perfect. You look better, Mary. I feel better, I said. I think I finally got my appetite back. Melissa wanted to be the center of attention. She wanted a day nobody would ever forget. She got exactly that. She's currently awaiting trial, facing 5 to 10 years in prison. Mark annulled the engagement the day after the non-wedding. My parents are pariahs in their social circle, known as the people who raised a monster and tried to cover it up. As for me, I'm still sick, I still have the tube, but I'm alive, and for the first time in 32 years, I'm free. My name is Mary Garcia, and I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't a plot or a scheme. Sometimes you just have to let the truth do the talking and let the trash take itself out. But the disposal process wasn't instant. It took 8 agonizing months of legal warfare to finally scrub the stain clean, and if you thought Melissa's behavior at the wedding was bad, you should have seen her at the sentencing hearing. See, narcissists don't do well in cages. They decompose. For the first 3 months after her arrest, my parents liquidated everything. They sold the vineyard estate they had planned to retire in. They cashed out their 401ks. They hired a dream team defense attorney whose billboard promised to make felonies disappear. They were convinced that if they just threw enough money at the problem, the misunderstanding would vanish, and we could all go back to pretending Melissa was perfect. They didn't understand that the district attorney, Mrs. Vance, wasn't interested in money. She was interested in making an example out of a woman who assaulted a disabled relative for aesthetic purposes. The trial lasted 3 days. I didn't have to testify in person. The video deposition and the audio logs from the ICU did the heavy lifting. But I was there for the verdict. I rolled into the back of the courtroom in my wheelchair. I was stronger now, gaining weight off the IV nutrition, though I still relied on the tube for calories, but I wanted to see her. I needed to see her. Melissa looked gray, that's the only word for it. Without her spray tan, her extensions, her professional blowouts, and her designer wardrobe, she looked like a stranger. She was wearing a baggy court-tissued blazer that didn't fit. Her roots had grown out 3 inches, a stark, dark band against the bleached blonde. When the jury foreman stood up, Melissa didn't look at him. She looked at me. She mouthed the word please. It was the first time in my life she had ever asked me for anything without demanding it first. We find the defendant, Melissa Garcia, guilty on all counts. The scream my mother let out from the gallery wasn't human. It was the sound of a woman watching her golden idol crumble into dust. The bailiff had to physically restrain my father from rushing the defense table, but the real kicker came during the sentencing phase 2 weeks later. Melissa's lawyer tried to argue for probation. He talked about her bright future, her lack of prior criminal history, her lapse in judgment due to wedding stress. Then the judge asked if the defendant had anything to say. Melissa stood up. She was trembling. I thought for a second she might actually apologize. I thought she might finally show a shred of humanity. I just wanted my wedding to be perfect, she sobbed, looking at the judge with wide, teary eyes. My sister has been sick for so long. She drains everyone. I just wanted one day where I didn't have to think about her tubes. Is that really a crime? Wanting one day. The courtroom went dead silent. Even her own lawyer closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. The judge stared at her over his spectacles for a long, uncomfortable minute. Ms. Garcia, the judge said, his voice flat and unimpressed. You ripped a life-sustaining device out of your sister's body because it clashed with your color scheme. You didn't want a day off, you wanted to erase her existence, and your lack of remorse is frankly chilling. He didn't give her probation. He gave her 6 years in a state correctional facility with a mandatory 2 years before parole eligibility. When the gavel banged down, Melissa didn't scream. She just collapsed. She went boneless like a marionette whose strings had been cut. The last thing I saw of my sister was her being dragged out the side door by 2 female deputies, her expensive heels scraping uselessly against the floor tiles. But the karma didn't stop with Melissa. My parents are currently living in a 1-bedroom apartment on the bad side of town. Since they spent every dime on Melissa's failed defense, they have nothing left. No house, no retirement, no reputation. Their friends, the ones they tried to impress with the lavish wedding, dropped them the second the news hit the papers. They are pariahs. They still try to call me sometimes. I have them blocked on everything, but occasionally a voicemail gets through from a burner number. Usually it's my mother crying, asking how I could do this to the family. She still doesn't get it. I didn't do this to the family. I survived the family, and Mark, the groom, he testified for the prosecution. It turns out once the blinders were off, he realized he had been sleeping next to a monster. He sent me a long letter of apology. He told me that Melissa had told him I was faking it for attention our entire adult lives. He felt sick that he had believed her. He's in therapy now, trying to untangle years of manipulation. We aren't friends, too much history there, but we aren't enemies. As for me, I sued my parents and Melissa in civil court for the assault and the intentional infliction of emotional distress. Since my parents were broke, the settlement came from the only asset Melissa had left, a trust fund my grandmother had left her, which she was supposed to access when she turned 35. The court liquidated it to pay my medical bills and pain and suffering damages. I used the money to buy a small, accessible house with a beautiful garden. I have a new nurse now, one who doesn't have to body block my relatives. I'm writing a book about my experience with chronic illness and family trauma. I visited Melissa's profile on the inmate locator website yesterday. It lists her job assignment within the prison. It's ironic, really. The girl who thought she was too good to look at a feeding tube, the girl who gagged at the sight of sickness, has been assigned to the prison infirmary sanitation crew. Her job for 8 hours a day is to scrub the floors and change the bedpans of sick inmates. She wanted to be taken care of for the rest of her life without lifting a finger. Now, thanks to the state of Texas, she has 3 meals a day, a roof over her head, and a wardrobe chosen for her. She finally got her all-inclusive lifestyle. Oh, she just can't live.